Hello again, I'm Mark Frary, co-founder of Travel Perspective, and glad we still have a good showing here despite being the last afternoon of World Travel Market this year. This session really promises to be an interesting one. I think it's why destinations have to change how they sell themselves. I first became a travel journalist more than 20 years ago now, and when I did that, tourist boards were usually pretty well funded. They had lots of public money behind them. Perhaps there wasn't so much private investment in them. But in the last 10 years, particularly with the sort of global economic crisis, I think we've seen funding levels go like that, and lots of more public-private partnerships arising. And of course, we've seen, a lot of the things we've talked about today, the rise of social networks and influencers, and perhaps things like tourist boards really do not have a long-term future. I don't know. So we're going to discuss some of these ideas today. So I'm very pleased to be joined on stage, moving from this side, Enver Dumini, CEO of Cape Town Tourism, works with a lot of influencers. Next to him we have Keith Beecham, ex of Visit Britain and now CEO of Visit Jersey. Next to Keith, we have Jenny Jean-Nivret, who's said very kindly that I can call her Jenny. She's a senior project manager at Visit Sweden. And last but not least, we have Aisha Shoaibu, who's an Airbnb host and also runs the When Night Falls in London Nightlife Experience Tour as part of their new Trips platform. And we're going to hear from Aisha perhaps about how there's going to be a bit more disintermediation in this business and connecting hosts directly with travellers, maybe through a technology platform like Airbnb. But I think it's going to be a really interesting afternoon. So yes, welcome to you all. So the way we're going to run this is that each of the people on the panel are going to present, what they've been doing recently. So, for example, Visit Sweden have been working with Airbnb and trying to put the whole country on that platform. Visit Jersey is leaning heavily on video content now and matching that up with bookable experiences. As I mentioned, Cape Town, a lot of the work you've done recently has been all about influencer campaigns, and you're one of the sort of the forefront of destination marketing organisations, I would say, and we've also already talked about Aisha. So first up, Enver, if you want to take the stage and tell us about what you're doing.
Excellent. Good afternoon, friends, fellow travellers. Mark, firstly, thank you for that brief introduction, because I think there's a fine line between an introduction and an obituary. So I hope that I'm not going to have a funeral after my 5 minutes. So let me get started. So firstly, who am I? Besides being a CEO of Cape Town Tourism, I'm also an African. And as Africans, we have a common belief, and this belief is what we call Ubuntu. Now, Ubuntu is not a new Uber or Uber Lite. Ubuntu actually has been around for centuries. And what Ubuntu means is, I am because of you, or I am because we are. And I think that's what we've always been doing as Cape Town Tourism. It's about being connected. It's about being connected with each other. And even right now, you and I are practicing Ubuntu. I am opening up my heart and my mind to share with you. And at the same time, you are opening up your heart and giving me a space in your mind to connect. And I think these fundamentals, as much as there's digital, we need to understand there's a basic need of people to connect. And no better ways there to connect than through travel. So as Cape Town Tourism, we've come up with a concept called Love Cape Town. And this was born actually 6 years ago in 2011, when we used influencers to come to our destination and spend time in our destination. But what we did differently was that we already then identified the need for locals, and locals to communicate and share their experiences and their destination with travelers. We created a brand and a hashtag called Love Cape Town, and through those platforms we allowed locals to share tips of the gems that they like to do. Where do they like to hang out? Why do they like to do those things? And that then created itineraries for travel influencers and bloggers to experience a destination based on those recommendations, not the DMO kind of saying, you need to go from this point to that point and only see what we want you to see. And that was risky for the DMO, because to your point, Mark, why would we do that? We're almost going to make ourselves obsolete and irrelevant if we have others actually tell the narrative. But what we also found was interesting was that locals were actually learning from locals. To a large extent, many people live in a city and they really don't know, and they kind of stick to the same formula. I do this on the weekend or I do that. But with the allowance of having locals share that content with each other, we were finding surprisingly new connections. And for us, there's a simple philosophy that a great place to live is a great place to visit. And based on those principles, I think for us, again, bringing Ubuntu into it and using digital and influencers to tell that narrative was kind of a no-brainer. But fast forward a few years, we also then said, well, how does digital help us to tell a different message? And how do we continue to reinvent ourselves? And that's where we came up with a Facebook campaign where we said, well, back then there was about 1 billion people on Facebook, and your Facebook profile was overworked. So if you are sitting in London and it's miserable and it's raining, why don't you send your Facebook profile on holiday to Cape Town? And that's what we did. Your Facebook profile actually went on holiday. You would get on a plane, you would have an air ticket in your name, your profile would land at Cape Town International Airport, someone would be waiting there with a board with your name on it, and would actually start posting on your timeline as if you were really in Cape Town. And surprisingly, a lot of people thought their friends were in Cape Town. But what was amazing about this was that it allowed for gamification on a platform that was unknown of how you can actually leverage that in the travel universe. So for us, it's not just about saying, well, how do you use technology, but also how do you make and amplify that by being a little bit more creative. But the challenge for most DMOs, and I think for most marketers, is we like to change marketing campaigns continuously because we are creative. And the problem is that the minute we get to the next campaign, we want to change it again. Why? I don't know. Maybe we just like the challenge. But we forget there's an audience that still needs to get to grips with a current campaign. So before we continue to move on, we need to find a common thread. And the Love Cape Town brand was that. We could change multiple campaigns, but it all needs to be driven under an overarching brand called Love Cape Town. But what we have also realized and noticed was there was a shift in certain trends. One was that the relevance of DMOs were coming into question. Two, travel like a local was beginning to grow. And three, we were seeing a major drop-off in our website traffic, up to 30% compounded growth decline in our website traffic. And we wondered why. Because of mobile. We had a clunky website, which was an asset of ours for many years. We were holding it together with duct tape and glue, and at some stage it was going to fall over. And we said, well, in order to remain relevant, we need to reinvent ourselves. So we went on a journey to rebrand, reposition, and also focus on mobile first. We then built a mobile-first website, and we were the first DMO in Africa, and I think one of 3 globally to do that about 3 years ago. And today we are being recognized by global publishers like Skift as being one of the top 25 websites in the world. But that didn't happen overnight. It's part of a journey where you have to, and I don't know if you guys know the shampoo algorithm. Have any of you heard of shampoo algorithm? If you look at the back of a shampoo bottle, it says wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. Now, if you had to follow those instructions continuously, you will continue to wash, rinse, and repeat until you ran out of shampoo, which is nuts. So for us as marketers, as a destination, we need to make sure that as much as we wash, rinse, and repeat, at some stage we needed to stop that, blow dry our hair, put on our best clothes, and put our best foot forward. And that's what we continue to do as a destination. But we also saw another shift, moving from marketing to management of a destination. And I think that, to a large extent, is where we see the shift for the organization. There are so many travel problems that visitors face day in and day out. And as a DMO, we need to understand and listen to what those problems are, and we need to find innovative ways to make ourselves relevant by finding solutions to those problems. A good example is that if you look at visitor information centers, I'm sure you guys have seen them with the I sign. The number one question in visitor centers worldwide is, where is the toilet? The number one question. If you look at visitor centers, the biggest problem they have is still an outdated model of brochure racks. They've got these shelves of brochures, and when a visitor walks in, he's lost. And what we said is, well, what if you could solve that problem without building infrastructure? What if you could have it where every single tourist could actually go and use toilets no matter where they were? And at the same time, what if they had to use those brochures and put it behind a toilet store door? Now imagine that. You've got a captive audience. You've got brochures behind a door in a place where they've got time to engage with it. So it's again by finding innovative ways that doesn't require tech, and sometimes maybe just a bit of logic and I think maybe being a little bit crazy, that allows us to do that. So in summary, for me and as a destination, reinvention is the key to relevance. 2, be brave. Sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. And 3, I am because we are. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Enver. Some really interesting points in there. I like the idea of having the brochures in the toilets as well, so just in case the toilet paper runs out as well, maybe, I don't know. These are some really innovative campaigns that you've done, but they're very much sort of branding level campaigns. I mean, do you look at, making these bookable as well? And, is that the way forward, do you think?
Yeah, I think to a large extent that's always been the role of DMOs. It's about awareness. And conversion was always the question that the industry used to ask as well, show me your relevance, because we don't see the bookings of people coming into our establishment or on our tours. And we started looking at that, and by going mobile first, we also said, well, we need to build an e-commerce platform. Because as much as about attracting people to the destination, we need to make sure that they go on those experiences. And that's where we looked at affiliate models, integration with other websites. And for us, it's a no-brainer because to a large extent, we get people to the site, and then that's it, and they do research. But we need to also create almost a sense of urgency on the website, which I see a lot of DMOs don't really do. Because we almost say, well, here's all we have to offer, and that's it. And somewhere along the line, you need to take people on a journey on the website, similar to when they are in the destination. And that is where, to a large extent, and I think in the previous session they spoke about artificial intelligence comes in. But I think sometimes just plain logic is that a good example is that we've got flowers that bloom at a certain time of the year. But what we do is we do traditional posts of saying, well, the flower season is up and here's some imagery. But what if you actually had to turn it on its head and saying, well, you've got 20 days left, 19, 18 days to see this that happens once in a millennia. It's how you change that narrative to create a sense of urgency for the traveler that they feel that if they don't do this now, then FOMO is going to kick in. And I think to a large extent, this is where DMOs need to be looking and shifting and saying, how do I create conversion? How do I find affiliate models, other programs to kind of do the work that I cannot do without it becoming too commercialized? Because I think at some stage, there's also the finding that balance between kind of pushing the destination brand without it being too product heavy, which I think sometimes is a challenge.
And I think you obviously have the challenge of having lots of private sector partners as well, and trying to be even-handed. And this is always the problem. And how do you do it in that sort of scarcity model that you're talking about?
Well, we've approached it in a few ways, but I think the simple way to explain it is that we've created tiered models, whereby if you've got a lot more money, you can get involved in bigger campaigns, because I think that's at the end of the day. And then we've got different sets of benefits and marketing opportunities for smaller guys. So whether it's someone that wants their brochure in a visitor center to the person that wants to work on a global campaign with us. Because as long as it's where they are, that they understand that it's all about the destination first, and that there may not be the immediate benefits, then that's where we kind of go on that same journey. And I think to a large extent, that's what a lot of bigger corporates do understand. It's about the us and we, not the I and me. And it's about understanding that there's a bigger mission around it for us. And why we do this as Cape Town Tourism specifically is that traditional DMOs focus on a few areas. One, get more people to visit, stay longer, see more, and spend more. We take it one step further, because for every 12 tourists that come to Cape Town, it creates one permanent job. That one permanent job creates an opportunity for someone to put food on the table, for someone to educate themselves or their family. And in that way, it creates a better society and community, again, under the philosophy of Ubuntu. And I think that's why we are kind of passionate about what we do and why we do it.
Great. Well, thanks for that, Enver. We'll come back to you later on that. Now, if I could turn to Keith Beecham, CEO of Visit Jersey, who's going to tell us about his video campaign.
Well, the exam question is why destinations have to change how they sell themselves. And I was given up to 5 minutes to answer that. I've got some broad brush thoughts, and then perhaps later on go into more detail as relevant. But why do destinations have to change themselves? And I think there are 4 broad reasons why we are where we are. First of all, I think we've just got to start with the traveller, the potential customer. They are becoming much more aware of destination, much more knowledgeable. The internet, we've got all of the social media platforms, we've got Instagram. they multiply all the time. So we have incredibly well-informed potential visitors to our island. And part of that analysis, I think, is for many people, certainly in the developed economies, travel, holidays is moving from something that, in a sense, you want to do to something that you need to do. It's becoming almost as important as the glass of water I have. That holiday that I have is absolutely key to my well-being and my wellness going forward, but as I say, particularly in the more developed parts of the world. So I think there's changes going on in terms of the awareness and knowledgeability of potential visitors. Second, competition. I've been coming to World Travel Market, I don't want to say how many decades, but for many decades. The range and breadth of DMOs, the range and breadth of the offer is ever expanding. You know, we're a small little island called Jersey. We've got some strong competition. There's a lot of established competitors out there, but there are yet to be newly emerging parts of the world and regions and cities that really want to use tourism as a way to assert themselves in terms of their reputation and indeed for the economic well-being of their citizens. So I think competition is another element that's massively fierce out there. Mention was made earlier as well about public finance. There's only one way, I think, globally that public finance into DMOs is going, and that's likely to be downwards. I think it will be exceptional that we'll see rising levels of government funding. So DMOs, tourist boards have got to, in a sense, recognize that and then find business models. Membership is one way that some go, that are able then to continue to do the job that they need to do, but on smaller amounts of taxpayers' money. So I think that whole public sector. Attached to that, I think as well, there are changes in government policies. Governments all around the world have their policies, and in different ways they use tourism perhaps to regenerate regions of their nation states that need regeneration. They use it as a way of developing jobs, perhaps. We heard a little bit about that earlier on. Some parts of the world use tourism as a way of asserting their reputation, kind of soft power, so to speak. So there are lots of reasons why governments find it helpful and useful to use tourism as an economic generator, but the monies going in, I think, are likely to be declining going forward. And perhaps 2 or 3 years I wouldn't be mentioning what I'm about to mention, but in the tourism press and increasingly creeping into the academic literature is this concept of over-tourism. There is too much tourism out there. Tourism is actually destroying, spoiling locations. And I think we all have an obligation to, in a sense, understand what does this actually mean. Is more tourism a good thing, or is it about managing tourism in a much more effective way? At the heart of that, really, I think, it's balancing 3 sets of factors. It's saying the environment is out there, and that needs to be, in a sense, looked after. The community that live in that environment clearly are the biggest stakeholders in that, and their interests must be recognized and looked after. And thirdly, it's the visitors who are coming, bringing money into those economies, also have to have their needs. There's got to be trade-offs amongst those 3 sets of factors, and I think part of a DMO's role is to, in a sense, work with, advise, if necessary, government on how that potentially goes forward. So those, in a sense, that's why I think perhaps the DMO model is beginning to change. And just very, very quickly, the way that we in Jersey are trying to respond to that, first of all, it's to have authentic stories. I've been working for tourist boards for over 30 years now, and it's really, in my personal opinion, it's about authenticity. Whatever it is you say on the tin has to be 100% delivered for visitors when they come. And there are countless examples out there of cities, regions, countries saying one thing, so that's the promise, but not actually delivering it. So I think at the heart of all of this, it's to understand the customer and to, in a sense, create authentic storylines. And the way we do that in Jersey, and I won't go into detail maybe later on, is we use Jersey people. They're the most passionate advocates for this beautiful island that I live in. So it's Jersey people initially that have started to tell the story. Increasingly, it's the visitors who are telling that. And that's all done through social media. It's done through 360 video, etc., etc. So there's a massive digital stream of information. Secondly, that's all about the promise. The product has to match that promise. It's no good me spending £3-4 million saying what a lovely island we are and doing all this great advertising, and then people come and what they experience is a disappointment. We have to ensure, and I think this is another role for the DMOs, that there is an investment whatever that looks like, in product development that is innovation, that is constantly moving forward, so that the visitor is able to have a fantastic experience, and they then become, of course, the word-of-mouth advocates for the destination. And then the third and final point, it's about partnerships. 30 years ago, when I started at Visit Britain, British Tours Authority in those days, I was giving a lot of money. I lived in Japan and I looked after Asia, and I could go and do whatever I wanted with that money. And I didn't have to worry about getting my suppliers on board. I didn't have to worry about the distribution channels and all the tour operators. I could spend that money in any way I thought appropriate. Those days have completely gone. Where we are today, it's about building partnerships between the DMO and the government, because we're partly delivering clearly on government agenda, ensuring that the community is part of that narrative. So in my case in Jersey, we did a massive exercise to get the people of Jersey to tell us what they are proud about in our island, and then we use that in telling the story of Jersey. And then it's the various players in the market, so the suppliers, the hotelier, the visitor attractions, but also the tour operators, because for our island, although direct-to-consumer is growing, we still have a really important role to continue working with tour operators. So those are sort of top-line thoughts, and later on, of course, can go into any detail that you may wish. Okay, thank you.
I'm really glad that you mentioned authenticity in there. I mentioned the video campaign that you had, and I know one of the people in the videos was an ambulance driver, I believe, and who was also really interested in food. And I think what that said to me is that you're actually, for the marketing people out there, you're actually making it very explicit what your marketing personas are. I think you had 4 different sort of target consumers who you want to come to Jersey. People who are interested in food, for example, is one of them. And I think that's a really interesting development that you're doing.
I think we have to move forward and nudge the opinions that people have about Jersey, that it's a lovely destination. People come in the summer months and they enjoy it. But it's an aging demographic. It's very important, and we'll continue to ensure that they can have a great time. But if Jersey is to thrive and prosper and the visitor economy is to grow, we need to be finding new sources of visitors. And the research that we've done, supported by, in a sense, as I mentioned, the community, is to target a different kind of demographic. It's not about your age. It's more around your attitude and your zest for life. And therefore, as you say, we have a firefighting foodie lady that talks about living in London, actually, and she came to the island, a real visitor. We have a cycling cabbie, so someone who's on the streets of London day in, day out. He came and enjoyed that. We've got a number of other ones that were out there. You've mentioned a few others. But that's about authenticity. We haven't scripted what they say. If Jersey.com, go and have a look at it all. These are their words. And of course, we prepared scripts, but we threw them away on day one. We just didn't need them. They talked with absolute passion. And as I said, it's all ages. We've got a surfing grandpa from Cornwall who says that surfing in Jersey is better than his home of Cornwall, so that's wonderful as well.
And he wasn't paid to say that?
No, a lot of people say, how much did you pay on this? It's all about the media spend, not the talent spend. We spend 0 on talent.
And how do you then match up the bookable offers with those personas, though?
Yeah. Well, again, not dissimilar from what we heard. We have a tiered approach, gold, silver, bronze, with our suppliers, and that buys in certain benefits, shall we say, to those suppliers. And so when we're talking about the lifestyle that you can enjoy in Jersey, then our hoteliers come in with the bookable offer. The activity suppliers come in with the activity offer. And the next stage, and we're not there yet, is to actually bundle this together a little better so that the visitor to our website, or indeed other websites, because clearly we distribute content across many platforms, can book that more easily. And of course, we have the TripAdvisor, the Expedias, etc., etc. So it's a journey. We're not at the end of this journey.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks for that, Keith. Jenny, I wanted to pass the words to you now, because you're working with Airbnb, which is to some people in travel perhaps the Antichrist. But perhaps you can tell us about how you're working with them.
Yes, of course. I would love to do that. I will go over here. Hello everyone. I'm so happy to be here on World Travel Market. It's my second time. I think it was 10 years ago I was here before. And I work at Visit Sweden's head office in Stockholm. I'm a senior project manager and work with nature tourism. And before I start telling you about the campaign, I would like to give you a little bit background. Because it is like this. Year after year, Sweden takes first place in many international rankings, listing the countries with the best quality of life. What's our secret, maybe you ask us? A big part of the answer is right outside our doorstep. It's nature, clean ways and easy to take part in. Nature literally improves Swedish lives. And studies have proven that spending time in nature makes us more creative, eases pain, removes stress, restores mental energy, and find our true selves. And never has the need for these things been greater around the world. That's why we would like to invite everyone to visit Sweden, because Swedish nature lets you discover your human nature. And the reason that I'm here today is to talk about the campaign Freedom to Roam that we launched this May in cooperation with AirBnb. And the purpose with this campaign was to raise awareness about Sweden as a tourism destination. I mean, we are well known as a country. I mean, you know, we have IKEA, we have ABBA and things like that. But as a tourist destination, we need to raise more awareness. And now, oops, I shall do like this. And I do like show you a movie.
How do we get people to consider Sweden as a holiday destination? We're not really famous for our great weather, or our vibrant city life, or majestic monuments. But we do have something that's pretty unique. It's called the freedom to roam, and it's a right protected by the law that allows us to sleep and eat and walk pretty much wherever we want, just like in a regular home. So to get people excited about Sweden, we listed the entire country on Airbnb. We welcomed the world to a 100 million acres large accommodation, where people could browse through different listings, with panoramic terraces, 100,000 tempered infinity pools, soaring ceilings and a fully stocked kitchen, all free of charge. And the news traveled fast. We had a minimal budget, but the campaign spoke for itself. And people got excited. This person thought it was shit balls. And Gabriel wanted to bring the world's entire population with him. And this guy didn't even know where he was going. But he was going. And he wasn't alone. In the end, people all over the world united over something as simple as an Airbnb listing. And we gave them a new reason to visit Sweden.
If you compare Sweden to classic destinations like London, Paris, or Egypt, I mean, you have the Big Ben, you have the Eiffel Towers, you have the pyramids. We don't have anything like this. We are more of an underdog, so we have to be more creative. Something we have is our lifestyle, and it's our close to nature lifestyle. And that is part of the souls of all Swedes. We can see that travelers today, we were talking about this before, seek for more authentic experiences. And the great opportunity for this is our unique law, right of public access, or we're talking about freedom to roam, which means that all Swedes, or you, if you want to visit us, you have the right to roam free in nature wherever you are. The idea of free accessibility to nature is in the DNA of every Swede, but with great freedom comes responsibility. As you could see here in this movie, this campaign was very successful. With a small budget, we got a great impact. It was a PR-driven campaign. We got almost 1,700 articles in 170 countries. And as I said in the beginning, the purpose with the campaign was to raise awareness about Sweden as a tourist destination with a focus on the US market. We wanted to use the influence of American media on the rest of the world to spread inspiration about Sweden, Swedish nature and lifestyle to more countries. In the campaign, we also have spokespersons, as we call proud supporters or ambassadors of Swedish freedom to roam, to give the target group the ambassador's personal image, perspective and love of Swedish nature. Then they spread the message about the campaign through their own social media channels. And we was, of course, very happy with this unique cooperation with Airbnb, which gave us reach that we never could have achieved on our own. We have a very small budget in Sweden working with this. And the creative twist to put on the whole entire country on Airbnb, we got great PR impact. So, as we sometimes call ourselves as a 1% brand with a much more modest budget than many other destinations and countries, we need to work more creative to get the impact. A few weeks ago, I just want to tell you before I finish, we launched another campaign. It's called 72-Hour Cabin. And it's kind of a scientific experiment, a case study that we did. And as you see, it's Ben Fogel there. We invited 5 people who have the most stressful jobs in the world. It was one broadcaster, one taxi driver from Paris. It was a police officer, an event coordinator, etc. We invited them to the west of Sweden to spend 72 hours in this beautiful cabin. Not all the time. They should live like Swedes do in the nature. And after 72 hours, we measured their well-being. And the stress level had lowered with 70%. So it was amazing. So you all have to come to Sweden and stress down. So this was also an example for a little bit different marketing campaign that we did. Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jenny, for that. Working with Airbnb there, which has got lots of bookable product on it, but you were actually promoting things that weren't bookable exactly because they were all free of charge, weren't you? They were like riverbanks and cliff tops. So was it really just an awareness campaign that you then piggybacked on to?
Yes, of course it was for us. We could never, with our small budget, get so much impact that we did. But to be honest, it was also a bit controversial, of course, because Visit Sweden, we are owned 50% from the government and 50% from the tourist industry. And sadly, we are now lifting a new competitor, how do you say that, in the industry. But actually, we talked with them, and everyone understand that we could never get this reach through a channel like this. And we own 50% of the government. We shouldn't take stand. We should focus on our target group. If our target group use Airbnb, some of them do, our potential, we should be there. So that's how we thought about it. So we thought it was a great cooperation with our Airbnb and, of course, the agency who helped us with the idea.
And do you know if Airbnb bookings in Sweden increased as a result of this, for their traditional properties?
We haven't got those numbers, so I don't know that. But I just know that in the USA we have, as you maybe saw in the film, 45% raise with bed nights in July. So it was great after the campaign.
Great, well, that's a good link on to Aisha now. Aisha Shuaibu is a host here in London. One of the new sort of people who are sort of perhaps disintermediating the destination marketing organisations and tourist boards. And one of the things that you're doing as well is you help with the trips program and you run a nightlife experience tour. And so traditionally those sort of additional activities and tours might have been sold by these tourist boards, or you'd pick up a leaflet in a tourist information centre. But now they would come directly to you. So I don't know if you can show us exactly what you're doing.
All right. girl does a good game?
Yeah.
From the shop, it's learning how to simultaneously apply it.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Aisha, and I started an Airbnb experience about 2 months ago. My Airbnb experience is called When Night Falls in London. This is a little bit niche because I decided to focus a little bit more on the LGBTQ community. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. What we tend to do on the experience is I try to get a lot of travelers, solo travelers, groups, as well as locals to come out in the evening with me. So what I'll do is I would gauge their interest, and I'll curate and tailor-make certain things that they are interested in. So we might go to comedy clubs, we might go to poetry nights, local and kind of very quirky performances, and then after that we'll go to an after party. And I feel like it's something people want to do more because there is so much going on for the daytime tourism, but nothing at night. And not everybody wants to go out alone. So I would go, even if one person books, I'll still come out. If I get a big group, I'll go out with them, and also some of my friends come out. So it's a great way to make new friends and to actually immerse yourself and feel like you're experiencing the best of London. What's included? So this is about a 6.5 hours experience. And you get a welcome drink. I'll pay for the ticket, for entertainment ticket, as well as the after party ticket. All right. This experience is designed predominantly for the LGBTQ community, but what I didn't expect was the interest coming from also the straight community. Some people want to experience how diverse London is, so I kept getting emails and people contacting me who are not in the LGBT community, but they want to come out anyway, which I welcome, because this is a very open-minded experience, and I feel like it's the best way for everybody to enjoy the best of London. So far I've got guests from all around the world, from South Korea, from Nigeria, all the way to China, and predominantly I get a lot of people from the US. There's no age limit. There's no maximum age limit. I get people from age 18 all the way to 70, and those people want to party a lot longer than me. So I have some days I'm like, don't they want to go home? So we're out until probably 6 a.m. You know, I'm happy to kind of stay out late as well. So up here I've got some pictures about some of the things we've done. So there's like a Vogue Battle event we went to. There's so many niche and interesting things in London that some locals don't even know. So what I'm trying to do is to make sure tourists and those who are living in London don't miss out on them. There are cabaret events, hidden gems, as well as unique performances that are on just for one night only. So the idea is to pack as much as I can in one night so that people can maximize their time here. So I feel like a lot of people are after like an authentic experience, and they're after something that is a little bit more away from the commercial hype. I feel like for me, when I do go on holiday, I want to experience something a little bit more unique, and I also want to feel like I'm part of that community. Surprisingly, I didn't expect a lot of bookings to come through. I'm out almost every other day. I do have like, I do have eye bags now, but I'm glad you can't see it so much because I'm out so often. So much that I had a few press interests as well, and the reviews have been excellent so far. People feel like they're welcomed, and people feel like they're getting the best of their time here in London. Where you can find me. So I'm on Airbnb under When Night Falls in London. There's my email up there. I've also just started a website, When Night Falls in London. Instagram me, Facebook me. Just like everybody else, I'm always on Instagram or Facebook. So thank you for listening.
I find all this fascinating, and I'm sure people in the room are probably thinking, how does that actually work in practice with Airbnb? How does that work on the platform? And how do you get paid for that? Do you take a share of the total fee, and Airbnb take a commission, presumably?
Yeah. So Airbnb take a part of the booking, and the rest of it is up to me. So I use that pot of money to actually pay for the tickets, buy them a drink, and also go out after. So I do know London very, very well, and in terms of the events that are constantly happening. So in one night, for example, I know 20 things that are going on, so I choose the best things based on their interests. So I pay for those things, I book them in advance, and then we go out and hopefully have fun.
And I know that we've talked about authenticity already with Keith there, and that seems really key to this. With the younger travellers that I talk to, that's what they're looking for. They don't want to stay in a chain hotel and just have the usual sort of going to I don't know, Madame Tussauds and looking at Trafalgar Square. They want something like what you're offering there.
Yeah.
You find that?
Yeah, that's what tends to happen. And also, I mean, the age range is amazing. I mean, although I was expecting a lot of younger travelers, I'm getting a lot of older travelers as well, because they want to go out, but they don't necessarily want to just go out straight clubbing. They want to see what kind of entertainment is going on, some performances. And I feel like a lot of people are after culture, and I feel sometimes it's hard for them to gauge that, especially if they're alone and they don't know anybody in that country.
Great. We are open to questions now. If you want to use slido.com or sli.do and type in the hashtag WTMLDN, and you can ask questions of our panel. I've got a couple to ask them myself. But Enver, I mean, are you worried about people like Aisha, that she's going to take away your job almost by having this direct relationship with people seeking authenticity?
No, I'm not worried, because I think to a large extent this is the evolution of travel. And I think for DMOs, it's maybe the way I can explain it, a simple analogy is that if I had to kind of write in front of us and facing me the number 6, from that side it's a number 9. And I think to a large extent that's kind of been the standoff between the industry and Airbnb and the sharing economy. And most of them are looking at it through different lenses. So for me, with the host, there is a concern around the future of visitor services, because this is an extension of that. But I think to a large extent also, it's not the only medium that people are engaging with the destination. So for me, it's also saying, well, how do we make sure that these experiences become part of our narrative? In that way, also amplifying it, and vice versa. So I think what Sweden have done by working closely with that platform allows them to speak to that audience. And they can also start making sure that the narrative about the destination is also brought on board. Because otherwise, what you end up having is multiple experiences, and then there's confusion about what is the destination actually about? What's at the soul of the destination? Because everybody uses the word authentic, but what does that really mean? And for each traveler, there's a different need. Maybe there are people that want to come to a destination that want to tick off those traditional experiences, and that's what they want. Then you have the guys that are repeat visitors that maybe are a little bit more experienced, that wants to go deeper into a destination. And I think there's a place and space for DMOs, for sharing platforms and economies. I think the question is just how do we figure out that, firstly, that there's a number in front of us and agree to that first, and then looking at how do we use a multiplier effect of multiplying the 6 by the 9 to give 54 that we can all benefit from, instead of trying to kind of take away from each other.
Mm-hmm. Keith, maybe I could ask you about that as well. I mean, does it worry you that there are people like Aisha, and that maybe Visit Jersey perhaps doesn't have a role going forward, in 20 years' time?
The exact opposite. I think we need innovation all the time, and what I hear is a product, a service, which is really delivering on what these visitors to London are really after. So businesses that are doing that, I think that's absolutely fantastic, and using all the new, well, it's not new anymore, but using digital technology in a way to promote all of that, I think is fantastic. therefore, what's the role of the DMO in all of that? I think there's a bit of an aggregation role, I think, because visitors want to do a range of things when they come here. You've the dining experience, the eating out experience, the heritage, spending quality time with friends and relatives. There's lots of reasons why people go on holidays, and I think what the DMO is able to do is to present the complete opportunity for visitors as opposed to a relatively narrow experience. But nevertheless, that narrow experience is actually what I want. But it would be interesting to understand from Aisha how maybe, in a sense, she moves towards the DMO model then and says, right, I can now link what you're doing with some of the other, okay, right, I've got a really cool restaurant that you might want to go to just on your own. So I don't think this is binary. It's not either or. There's space for everybody, and the DMO has to demonstrate to the government, to the taxpayer, and to the visitor the value that it's adding. And I think as long as we can continue to demonstrate there's real value, then there's still a future. But as I think we're saying here, is that role is changing and it will continue to change.
Yeah, Jenny, I mean, do you find that local tourism businesses are still willing to put money into DMOs and people like Visit Sweden? Do they want their voice heard and are willing to pay those tiered levels of funding that you were talking about?
Yeah, I think so. And the tourism industry in Sweden has increased for 10 years now, and especially from the government perspective, they invest more money in Visit Sweden to make sure that we get more people to come to Sweden and create jobs in the countryside, etc. So, I think we don't see any problems with this in Sweden, no.
So we've got a couple of questions for you there from the audience as well. So how did the people that own private land, for example, farmers, react to you promoting the freedom to roam with Airbnb?
When we promote the freedom to roam, we thought it's very important to say that you also need to respect the nature. I mean, as a Swede, you learn that when you grow up, but if you get a lot of people coming there, it's very important to tell them to respect and how to act in nature. So we also have discussions with landowners about this in Sweden. But I think it's not a problem. We are working with this question, and people also need to understand that if you have all this destination and countries and companies who want to market themselves on global, you have to be unique in one way. You have to get through all this, and we have our freedom to roam. That's what we want to talk about. But then when the traveler comes, most of them, they don't want to camp or something. They want to stay in a hotel, maybe take a backpack during the day, and have a good glass of wine in the evening and a good dinner. So that's how we see about that. Yeah.
Aisha, a question there for you. Do you hear from local people, not just visitors from America, want to do it? And is that behind why you've set up your own website as well, perhaps?
Yeah, because I realize not everybody is on Airbnb. But some locals have found me through Airbnb as well. I think so far I've had probably about 6 or 7 that are from London. And again, I mean, focusing back on the LGBT community, not everybody goes out all the time. So they don't know what's happening in London as well. So some people that have been away for 10, 20 years, they come to me and go, Aisha, this is a great idea. I'd like to come out with you this weekend. Are you doing anything? Or I really enjoy a little bit of comedy or poetry. Can we go to that? So it seems that the Airbnb platform also provides room for locals who are still here.
Enver, you mentioned about the drop in website traffic, and we had this question from the audience. Do you actually need a Visit X, or a Visit Cape Town website in the future, given that?
Yeah, I think to a large extent, I mean, we noticed the drop because we were still using outdated platform. And with the growth in mobile traffic, we need to make sure that the website was mobile first. In other words, quicker loading, people can use on the devices, and then, of course, book. But there will still be a need for websites in general. I think to a large extent, lots of people think that, apps were going to replace websites. But what you find is that people download apps, but if they don't have a 3G connection, then they can't use some of those apps. And I think a lot for travelers is a lot of people don't have those connections. Wi-Fi isn't globally readily available anywhere. So to a large extent, websites' function and form will shift. But that Visit X is a brand. And with the investment in the brand, the job of any organization is to make sure that that is ranked highly in Google or whatever platform. But I still see that there's a use for it. Its form and function will need to shift. Because with new platforms, and there's so many more that's going to come on stream, is how do we make sure that our aggregation, but our messaging and our branding remains relevant. And I think that becomes a challenge of how do we hold that, and with the challenges from new tech, specifically AI.
And we heard from Facebook earlier on about the huge growth in mobile and the interest in that. So I was going to ask you that same question about whether you need a website, given there are 2 billion people on Facebook, and they don't want that website experience on Facebook.
Well, I think the one-word answer is yes, and then the reason why, in a sense, I agree with everything that we've just heard. I think it also acts as a rallying point for the region, the town, the country, that it brings people together and it amplifies potentially what the brand story is. I think in my instance, in Jersey, I think historically there's been a number of different voices describing what the Jersey holiday experience is like. I think bringing that together with suppliers and then having a shop window, because that's effectively what it is, allows us to communicate clearly then what we think is our authentic offer. But it is only one of many. We distribute much more content on third-party sites, Facebook's, TripAdvisor's, whole host. My single biggest marketing budget is distributing content on third-party websites. So again, it's not an either-or. I think it needs to be part of the armory of a destination. But it needs to be done, I think, really, really well. And there are some absolutely superb websites out there which are really explaining to visitors the promise that you're going to get, and there are some that I think are less good at the moment.
So Jenny, with a quick question there, where is the 72-hour cabin? It looks amazing.
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's on the west coast called Dalsland, and if you go to our website, visitsweden.com/72-hour cabin, you can actually book a cabin like this. But you should stay 72 hours.
Yeah, I have to argue as well that Ben Fogel, I'm not sure he does have a stressful job, though. I'd quite happily...
It was a broadcaster, which should be one of the most stressful jobs in the world. So,
there was a question on here about UGC, user-generated content as well. I mean, I know that's come up a lot with destinations, how much you should be using that. And we heard from Jaume at Costa Brava Tourism in the previous session about Instagram and using those Instagram images. Should you be sort of embracing that? Do you think, Enver?
Yeah, I mean, we realized the use and the purpose of user-generated content because, to the point before, the Airbnb experiences, that was the medium that we used to have locals tell their story. And what's important is also to credit those people that are producing the content, because I think to a large extent people like to collect things and then they use it in other programs and campaigns without recognizing the value of locals. So for us, user-generated content is important, but at the same time, the curation is also required because we also don't want to have too many multiple messages about the destination. Otherwise, that confuses the audience. But I think to a large extent, we have focus on UCG. We'll continue to do that. But we almost want to start a conversation and then allow it to grow organically, rather than trying to control the conversation, because I think to a large extent, that's where we get things wrong, because we're trying to control too much. So for us, start the conversation using UCG and just allow it to grow organically.
Yeah, I suppose you could argue that we've lost control of the message a long time ago, and that the travellers actually have that control now, and so perhaps you just need to be not necessarily a guardian of it, but just to manage that and take your part in that conversation.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think we've moved from creator to curator, and being the overseer of it is about making sure that we protect the destination that we are entrusted to or entrusted with, and I think also this is the beauty of social media. It allows for those conversations to happen 24/7, 365 days a year. And in travel, if locals love their destination, they'll continue to amplify it. And I think that's more than we can ever ask for as a DMO.
Yeah. Aisha, someone there says you've got a great business model there. I think that you should be expanding it to other cities. And you're obviously very passionate about London and discovery of these interesting experiences. And but you're one person though.
Yes, that is the problem. No, ideally I would like it to expand. I think later on I'll look into doing so, because I think for me one of the most important thing is, especially being from the LGBT community, is wherever you go you want to feel safe. And also, I would love every weekend that I do go away that I'm enjoying the best of that city, and knowing that I'm doing the best thing within my, the hours I have left. So I feel it will be great and it will be amazing for every city to have what I've created now in London.
Great. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time there. I think, the thing that's really come out of this is that, maybe you should be looking at more partnerships with more people and being very creative about how you're marketing destinations and, seek out these enthusiastic people and do deals with them, because, they're going to be your best ambassadors, but perhaps not be frightened about, the loss of the public finance. And, there are ways that you can do that, but perhaps by being a curator of that image rather than the sort of old controller of that image. So thanks everybody for sharing those, and I hope you found that really useful. I found it really interesting. So Aisha, Jenny, Keith and Enver, and I'm sure they'll be around for a couple of minutes to answer any questions afterwards. So please show your appreciation. Thank you.